Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I am super pumped to talk to you today about this topic. First of all, because I love numbers, I'm a financial guy. I love talking about anything that has to do with the value of your business, profitability, cash flow, all of that stuff. I mean, really, really excites me. Doesn't excite you? Your eyes are rolling up in your head right now, listening to me even get excited about this because, oh my God, he's such a nerd. But, but I have Brooke Lively today. Brooke was here on the podcast back in what was the date? July of 2021 is when we released this episode 232. You can find it at profitwithlaw.com/232, or simply search your podcast player for it. Profit from Business, the Value of Understanding Your Numbers with Brooke Lively was what we talked about back then. Well, Brooke's cooking up something new, and I am so excited for her and what she's doing. She's releasing a book. It's called Exit on Top: Sell Your Law Firm to the Right Person at the Right Time for the Right Price. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with her because, as she put it so succinctly in the green room talking to me before, is that a law firm that is marketable is a law firm that everybody wants to own. Um, Very simply, if you think about it, like, why would somebody buy your firm? Somebody would buy your firm if it's making money, it's got cash flow, and the owner is not the key person in the company. Now, if you have a business that's making money, has cash flow, and you're not working, wouldn't you be really, really happy with that firm? Of course you would. So, um, coming at law firm ownership from the perspective of maximizing value in the business will actually drive you to make better decisions as a business owner. And I can't wait to talk all about this with Brooke. So here's the official bio. Brooke Lively, founder and CEO of what I don't know. Oh, CathCap. Founder and CEO of CathCap, a fractional CFO company that provides strategic advice to drive profitability. They have helped 250 plus law firms, including some recognized in the Inc. 5000, make more money by creating clarity in their numbers. Brooke, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking time out of your very, very busy and hectic day to come and talk to our audience. But now I've just primed the pump and they are waiting with bated breath to talk about numbers. No, I talk about a successful business. But if you guys want to hear Brooke's backstory, definitely go and check out episode 232. I'm not going to ask you to repeat your backstory. What I am going to ask you is, from fractional CFO, not a big leap to this, but what made you decide to put a book out on this and focus on this topic for law firm owners?
There's some themes that we're seeing. The first one is we are seeing a lot of our clients buying out their partners or going out into the marketplace and buying other firms. I think that we've got the baby boom generation that is starting to get out of their firms. In the past, firms were kind of passed generation to generation, and there wasn't a big belief that there was a lot of value in a firm. I think that's changing, and people are realizing that these are businesses that have value. I think the other thing that we're seeing is non-attorney ownership is coming. It's already happening in Arizona and in Utah, though I have heard a rumor that Utah might repeal it. But it's going gangbusters in Arizona. And with that, I think we're going to see private equity come in, and that's going to be a game changer. So I thought we need to get ahead of this, and we need to talk about what a marketable law firm, what a great acquisition looks like, because it takes 3 to 5 years to get there. And we want, 3 years of really great looking financials before we sell. And that's what we do as a fractional CFO. We make sure that you've got those great looking financials. So that's why I wrote the book.
Awesome. Love it. And what's interesting is that when you approach it from maximizing the value I can get from my firm, um, it creates opportunities for you to improve your business, right? It helps you highlight that. But on the flip side, if I'm a buyer in the marketplace going to buy a firm, um, knowing this information can now actually help me to get a law firm, purchase a law firm for a lot less money than they might be asking for it because I'm smarter. I'm approaching the conversation from a different lens. Like, why do you think your firm is worth that? What am I going to do when you're not working? Um, what is the value that you're selling me? You're selling me a client list, but you don't get repeat business, right? So what is the value of your client list? Stuff like that, where without this knowledge, you would not be able to come at that conversation from that perspective and simply, oh, you've got a law firm with 4 attorneys. It's probably worth $2 million. I'll pay for that. But maybe it's not.
I was going to say, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. One of the
Right.
things that we did in the book is we created a quiz that really looks at all the different parts of your law firm and gives you a score. And I sent it to a client at 10 o'clock the other night because she had randomly found a law firm online. Not my first client who has done this, but randomly found a law firm online that
Gotta
she
love that
about
midnight
buying.
pajama shopping.
I'm like, oh my gosh. The last one went really well. Ended up going through a very reputable broker that I just love. It went through the law practice exchange. So I was like, oh, you're good. Um, but I sent this to her. I'm like, you need to look at these things. This is how you value the law firm. What do they look like in terms of their financials, their people, their process, their technology? All of the things that make them a good law firm. So it gives you some ways to look at it and value it and see what a buyer values and see what you as a buyer should value.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a moment. Let's talk about what a buyer values because you're probably going to get some, but not all of the points checked, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at a firm. Let's just approach it from I'm a buyer looking at a firm, valuing it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, if all the boxes were checked, there would be a predictable pattern of business acquisition. There would be profitability to a certain level, and there would there would be a clean balance sheet, not a lot of debt on the balance sheet or manageable serviceable debt.
That
Um,
that doesn't matter because most people don't buy the debt when they buy the business.
yeah, if you're buying a business or if you're buying a customer list or like we start piecing and parsing it out, right? Like,
All right, well let's go through it this way.
sure.
So the first thing any buyer is going to look at is the financials.
Hmm.
So as you said, is it profitable? What percent of revenue is going to payroll? Um, what percent of revenue is going to marketing? What percent of revenue is available for the owner to take home? Um, what's your financial reporting look like? Do you have a handle on that? And how much time, and this is the important one, how much time does the owner spend on the financials? Right? Because if they're
Hmm.
spending all their time in there's something going on and you need to dig deeper. So then look at marketing. Where do the clients come from? And you talked about this. The business that continually comes in are is are the clients coming from one source? We have one client that gets 100% of her clients from TikTok. TikTok shut her down for 30 days. That's all your eggs in one basket. That's not so great. Um, is there a marketing plan?
Oh, and she has bigger problems coming up with the
With I
U.S.
know
government wanting to shut
government,
TikTok down altogether.
yeah. Um, but is there a marketing plan? Is it being executed on? Um, what metrics are you tracking And this is an interesting one. How much of the owner is wrapped up in the firm's brand? Because if your firm is named Robert Heineken, and everything revolves around Robert Heineken's name and image, it's going to be real hard to transfer that. And again, that question, how much effort does it take for the owner to drive marketing? So we're going to keep following like a prospect's journey. So sales and intake, whatever you want to call it. Do you have salespeople? Um,
What's their conversion rate?
yeah. Do you have a process for finding and removing friction in that sales process? Do you have a way to train people? Do your salespeople get regular feedback? And how much effort does it take from the owner? And then we want to look at operations. And this is one that is really important to me. We discovered a few years ago that the firms that were really excelling that worked with us were running on something like EOS.
Mm-hmm.
And so that became our number one outgoing referral.
For
Is
those of you who are not familiar, EOS was made very well known from the book Traction and Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman. If you haven't read those books, definitely recommend picking it up. It's a tough read for somebody who's really small. Because it's hard to wrap your head around all of the various departmental stuff and departmental meetings and stuff like that. But ultimately, as your business grows, you need to have some sort of operating system for the business. EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system, dubbed EOS. But there are other systems out there. At the end of the day, the big pieces of it are basically having goals set, having metrics set, having people responsible for them, having clear division of responsibility so people know what their job function is, things like that.
well, I do want to say we run on EOS. We have for like, I don't know, almost 10 years. And we self-implemented when we had 4 employees. And it worked beautifully because it created that accountability. But what I was saying was ultimately I became an EOS implementer because we saw how much, what a difference it made. So when we start talking about operations, these are a lot of things that we talk about in EOS. Do you have the right reporting structure in place? Have you documented the 20% of processes that cover 80% of the work? Does each member of your team own their role? Is everybody in their ideal role? And are they ideal in the role they're in? And again, here's the question. What's the question? How much time does it take from the owner?
Mm-hmm.
We have to look at people. And this is a lot about culture. How deliberate is that firm about their culture?
I want to pause for 1 second, Brooke. We'll get
Yeah.
and I'll bring you back to culture, but we keep talking about the time the owner is spending, and I just wanted to take a moment. It might seem obvious, but we should talk about why that's a bad thing, right? When you're buying a firm, you're buying everything but the owner,
That's right.
right? You get to keep all the parts except for the guy who's selling or gal who's selling because they want out. Now, I think in a lot of transactions, it might be acceptable or even expected for the owner to stay for a period of time. Um, but ultimately, if things revolve around the owner because of the relationships they've built or because they've been unable to figure out how to let go of the tasks that they're doing, that becomes a problem because when they leave, what's going to happen? Is everything going to unravel? Is the team going to be unable to function without them? As a matter of fact, if we go even further, there's 2 stages of growth. So when somebody grows out of being a solo and running a practice, the first thing that you do is you hire staff. But when you hire staff, you start to delegate by tasks. So you basically hand off tasks, but you own responsibility. The next level of growth is when you delegate responsibility and it comes off your plate as the owner. And if they haven't figured out that piece of it, they haven't figured out how to delegate responsibility. People on the team are not empowered to make decisions on their own and to be held accountable for those. That's going to create a situation where you now have to do that, but but it's very abrupt. They're going to leave, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of people who don't know what to do. Who are they going to?
Yeah, they're going to you. And, I, in the book, I tell the story of one of our clients, and this was, what did you call it? Pajama shopping? Is that
Yes.
what you called it?
Yeah.
He was pajama shopping, lives in El Paso, Texas, found a firm in Atlanta, Georgia that she wanted to buy and bought it. That firm did not need the owner to make every decision. That firm, those employees were empowered to make decisions. Can you imagine what a disaster it would have been if she lived in El Paso and acquired a firm in Atlanta and she had to make every decision in Atlanta? I
Yep.
mean, so that's why it's important. That's why you want to know. All right.
Absolutely.
You want to talk about culture now?
Let's go back to culture.
All right. So we're talking about culture and people. So how deliberate is the firm about culture? And does that culture match your culture? But you want a strong culture. Um, do they have a documented, repeatable hiring process? And what does their onboarding and training program look like? This is a big one. Do they have a career development program for their employees? You know, do
Well, I mean, are we talking about where they give you compensation for going, taking extra classes, or are we talking about a career path, a clear career path escalation within the organization?
do they have something?
Got it.
Do they have something that allows their employees to continue to grow? Does everybody have an individualized plan? Does every employee know what they can do over the next year and how the company's going to support them in that? Um, and then again, the owner time question. All right, we've got a couple more.
Go for
Production.
it.
All right, so let's face it.
Wait, you got to produce also?
Yeah, you got to produce, right? Because we're selling legal services here.
Right. Well, production is it's interesting because it's the thing that we're best at, right? Like, and it's the default mode. If I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing as the owner to work on the business, well, I'm gonna go and produce, right? I'll just go and perform some legal work. I'll answer some emails. I'll, you know, take some consults. Um, but yeah, production is key at the efficiency, the customer service that they're getting, all of those.
Absolutely. So, one question that I really like to look at is how far ahead um, do they know when they need to make their next billable hire? So that goes to their capacity.
Hmm.
Do they understand with the number of new cases they have coming in when they're going to max out? Um, does everybody have some kind of billing goal? And are they held accountable every week? Um, do you understand the capacity of the firm? Do they know how much work they can handle at any time? And are they confident that they have the right ratio of attorneys to non-attorneys? And how much effort does it take from the owner to keep the work moving through the firm? So I had a sales call with somebody last week. She was fascinating. Firm was doing $3.2 million and they had 8 attorneys and she billed 1 million of that 3 million
Personally,
personally.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean first of all, I mean 8 attorneys for 3 million is a problem right there. Um, I'd like to see closer to 1 million per attorney.
Yeah. But if you were going to buy her firm and she left,
I lose a third of my revenue.
you lose a third of your revenue and you got 7 attorneys sitting there and you still got to support.
7 attorneys who can't do more than $300,000 of work a piece.
Yeah, that's not very attractive.
Nope.
All right. So the last thing you want to look at, and this is a hard one, is technology. Attorneys are not known to be early adopters. You guys, I mean, come on. We have like dragged you kicking and screaming into the 21st century. So I think that anyone buying a firm realizes that there's going to be a big technology project coming. Because even if the firm you buy does have a lot of technology and everything is in the cloud and everything is documented and everything is tracked, the chances that they will have the same exact technology that you use in your firm is somewhere between slim and none. Even if
Yeah.
it is, you're going to have to migrate everything in their database into your database. So if you're trying to figure out how to make your firm more valuable and you're looking at a short time period, technology is probably not the place to spend your time. That being said, technology is an amazing place to be able to prove the value of your firm because that's where you can actually show people what's going on. So if everything is in the cloud, if you are using 80% of your practice management software, let's face it, nobody's ever going to use 100% of anything. But if you're using 80% of it, if you're using 80% of your marketing software, and if those things are integrated, you are going to have amazing information to be able to prove that you've got really good financials, where your clients are coming from, how long it takes you to work the cases, what your capacity is in your firm, when you need to hire people. All those things that we've been talking about, you can put data behind them.
You know, it's interesting because, and I can't speak for how people who are listening to the show are feeling right now, but it's almost like, you know, if you're sitting there listening, you're like, okay, I got one of those things. I might have two of those things, and there's like 20 things we just talked about, right? Um, there's a place where this feels daunting. There's a place where this feels like unattainable,
Yeah.
and you need to remember that Brooke didn't get here by just starting yesterday, right? She didn't just work with one law firm yesterday and come up with this. And she and the case studies or the examples that she shares, they didn't start off overnight being like people don't start their firms being organized and having all of these metrics known and all of those things happening. It's almost like an evolutionary process that happens with your firm. What I want you to get from this podcast, because we're not done, we're going to keep talking, and there's a lot of gold being uncovered here. And if nothing else, pick up the book. By the time that we release this show, it will be out. So we're recording this before it gets released. Exit on Top by Brooke Lively. Go pick it up. We're going to link it up in the show notes. Because that's going to help you a lot more than this 45-minute conversation we're having. But I think it's really, really important to understand that there's a process to this, and you you get the ability to um, to grow into it. And sometimes it's just a matter of having the focus, understanding what you need to focus on. So the knowledge here is just to set you up to understand where you should be putting your efforts. And one thing I'm going to ask you, Brooke, is if we had to prioritize, like there's all these different areas of the business that need clarity, that need owner extraction. Where
Mm-hmm.
would you say we should like they should focus if we wanted to look departmentally. Um, and I have my own opinions, but I'm curious what yours are for the owner to focus on getting something where the metrics are clear, the delegation is clear, the responsibility's been handed off, and now I can move on to the next thing and make sure that those are all done.
So what I love about what we've done in the book is there's a quiz. So it shows you where you're weakest. And then we have a whole section about the psychology of fixing, because not everybody can fix their weak departments in the same way. There are some teams that are great at fixing multiple things at one time. There are some teams that have to fix one thing at a time, and that's all we're going to fix this. And when that is great, we're going to go to the next thing. There are some teams that can fix one thing at a time, and they need to fix the toughest thing that's going to have the biggest impact. And there are other teams that need to pick the easy thing because they need a win.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it is knowing who you are and who your team is. Everything is going to be reflected in your financials. So as a CFO, I say we talk about everything in your law firm that touches the money. And no one has ever been able to name anything that does not touch the money. Emotion, if you can, you get it. If you can find something that doesn't touch the money, you get a prize. No one's gotten the prize yet. I
Yeah,
know.
but I think that we need to help create some clarity, right? Like, yeah,
Right.
everything touches the money, and therefore you need to do everything. But then we're back at square one, right? How do you eat
Far
an
back at
elephant
square
one
one.
bite at a time, right?
So
So,
hold on. Let me tell you the other part of my answer. That's part of why I love being an EOS implementer, because it does give you the clarity. And I'm going to tell you that almost everything starts with, in some way, your people. Do we have the right people in the right seat? So it's going to center around your culture, your hiring, and your organization. Are we properly built? Do we have the right jobs? And are we compensating those people correctly?
yeah, and I think that if we just think about responsibility, ownership, um, that probably is the biggest linchpin in this whole thing because all of these things that need to be addressed technically should be somebody else's responsibility, not the owner's. So if we just start saying, okay, here's the 20 points that we discussed, and I want to have metrics for this, and I want to know that I'm not involved in that, and I want to, and we start looking at all these things, if we just start asking the question of who's responsible for that, and just take your org chart and just start putting pins on it, right? Like this person should be responsible for this person should be responsible for this. Well, now you can sit down and have conversations and say, you're now going to be responsible for this, and this is what that means.
Mm-hmm.
We're going
This is
to
what it looks like.
define goals and objectives. We're going to have a way to measure your success, and we're going to start checking in regularly about it. That is the fastest way to find out if you've got somebody who you think should be responsible for something and can't be responsible for something. Wrong person in that seat, right? Because that'll once you get clear on the delegation part of delegating responsibility, and then you as the owner stay on top of simply doing the check-in. It will
The
become very,
accountability.
very clear very, very quickly who's able to carry their own weight and who cannot.
Yeah, I think there are two reasons why people can't delegate. One is, in EOS, we call it clinging onto the vine, holding onto the vine. And in the story is this: guy falls off a cliff. On the way down, he grabs a vine and he looks up and he's 1,000 feet from the top. And he thinks, I can't climb 1,000 feet up. So he's like, all right. And he looks down and he's 1,000 feet up from a bunch of really sharp rocks. So he thinks, okay, this is the time. If ever I have believed in God. So he looks up and he says, is anyone up there? And a voice comes down, it billows around him, and it says, do you believe? Guy's like, okay, well, I'm sitting here, I'm holding on to the vine. I got nothing to lose, right? He's like, yeah, I believe. And the voice says, let go of the vine. And he looks up and he says, is there anybody else up there? How a lot of owners feel, right? We want to delegate, we want to hand it over, but I'm sure I need another opinion. So part of it is that it's hard for the owners to hand it over. But the other part of it is that we don't have the right people to hand it to. And you're right. It's that Jim Collins theory of the right person in the right seat. Are they a core values match? Do they understand the job? Do they want the job? And do they have the intellectual capacity to do the job? Do they have the skill set? If they have those things, awesome. If they don't, we need to replace them, because if they don't, you're going to delegate things to them and they're going to screw it up. And what you're going to do is you're going to learn the lesson. Don't delegate.
Yeah, 100%. Gospel. Preach, Brooke, preach. You're absolutely right. I mean, I think, yes, the clinging to the vine is a good example, but every law firm owner, if you ever want to become more than just, $1 million, $2 million firm, you're going to have to figure out how to not cling to the vine. You're going to have to figure out how to assign responsibility and hold people accountable. Because that first level of delegation where you're just delegating tasks and you're the puppet master, it might get you to 2 million. It might even get you to 5 or 10, but it's not going to allow you to build a business that you love, because you're going to be a chain to that business. You will not be able to go anywhere. You will not be able to do anything. You have no life because every decision revolves around you. So yeah, you might get on a plane to go on a vacation with your family, but your nose will be in your phone the whole time
Yeah.
because nobody knows how to make a decision without you. At the end of the day, that level of growth has to happen. So you're gonna have to figure that out. It's the second part that needs to that needs to be addressed, and it's not going to happen overnight for you to figure out, do I have the right people in these seats? And if not, what do I do? Right? I mean, you can just fire everyone, but more than likely, they'll be a good fit. They'll be a good fit in another seat, right? If they're a good culture fit and they've been there for a while, you're not going to want to let them go, but they can't do the role and responsibility that they're in right now if they can't do it, right? So you got to make some tough decisions. And what happens more often than not is when you put somebody in a role that's more suited to them, they thrive. They love it. It may to you it feels like, oh, maybe they'll see it as a demotion or something, right? But at the end of the day, if they're doing something that they're good at, that they can excel at, they're gonna be thrilled. They're gonna be happy. And if they're not, then they're gonna leave. And that was what needed to happen anyway, probably.
Yeah.
So
Here's the thing. Generally, when people are not succeeding in their role, they're not very happy. They know they're not doing well. They know they're disappointing you. They know they're not getting the job done. And that's not a very nice way to feel. I had somebody working for me at one point who uh, was doing something that she said she wanted to do, and we would get on the phone every week because I'm a 100% remote company. We'd get on the phone every week to do our accountability call. And finally, I was like, Sarah, do you want to do this? Like, is this, and we had come to Jesus discussion. And she said, I dread talking to you every Tuesday because I am failing you. I'm like, then let's find something where you're not failing. And that job where they're not failing, unfortunately, may not be with you. It may be with another firm,
Hmm.
or it may be with a dentist's office, or it may be in retail.
Right. Or maybe at Dunkin' Donuts, but
It may be. But if you don't have that discussion, you are keeping them from having that feeling of a job well done.
yeah. And this is, I mean, we probably went into an area that you didn't think we were going to cover today, but this is really something that a lot, I mean, most owners grapple with this because it goes against the grain of who you are as a person. Most people start their business because they want to help more people, right? Most people start a business because they feel like I can do better. I can do more. So you want to do more for your employees first and foremost. And it feels like you're not doing right by them. It feels like you're doing them a harm or a disservice. And we coaches can sit here and preach about it all day, but the reality is that we can't take that feeling away from you. But we could prove to you with hundreds and thousands of examples of people who got fired and it was the best thing that ever happened to them. The same way that you probably have a friend who got divorced and it was probably the best thing that ever happened to them, right? Like something that seems like an awful ending to a story is actually the beautiful beginning of the next story.
Yeah. So I want to tell two stories. The first one, I was dating this guy, and my mother called and said, "Is he Mr. Right?" I'm like, "No, but he's Mr. Right now." She's like, "That is the most selfish thing I have ever heard you say." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Every day you date him is the day he is not meeting the girl he's meant to marry." And sure enough, we broke up and he was engaged within like 5 or 6 months. I
Thanks,
was
Mom.
stopping him from meeting the girl he was destined to marry. Good for them. I'm so glad they found each other. And so the same thing with your employees, right? You're stopping them from finding that amazing job where they're so happy. But it doesn't mean that you have to walk in and say, "You're fired, pack up your stuff and get out." We had an employee. She didn't seem very happy. We talked about it. She said, "No, I'm not very happy." We're like, "Okay, we're going to give you," I think we gave her a 3-month runway. Your job will be over in 3 months. You've got 3 months to find another job. If you find one before that, that's fine. You can leave. But basically, we gave her 3 months notice. She didn't stay the whole time. She found a new job in like 6 or 7 weeks. And then was like, "Hey, I'm out in 4 days," which I'm like, "Really? We gave you 3 months notice and you gave us 4 days, but whatever." It doesn't have to be "you're fired, to get out today." It can be a great, loving, caring conversation because you do care about these people and you want what's best
Yeah,
for
and you can work your network, try to find them the place to land. Like it's not it's you want the best for them, right? Like the reason behind it is not because it's not good for you. It's because you want the best for them. And if
them.
you approach it from that perspective, then you can do things for them that you wouldn't do otherwise. Like give them more time, pay them for a little bit longer where you don't feel obligated, but you want to set them up for success. Hopefully they don't, waste it and not look for a job until the money runs out, kind of thing. But you do your part in being the best version of yourself to facilitate and lift them up. Um, but it's interesting because we're spending so much time on this because people are the assets of a law firm, right?
Mhm.
And I talk about this in other ways. I give an example of like if you open a supermarket, right? And you have 10 aisles of shelving, but you put one item on the shelf, right? You'll sell that item, but then what? You got nothing to sell. And that's what happens when we're like, you're the attorney and you have nobody else, right? Like you only have so many hours to give and then you've got nothing to sell. the attorneys and the paralegals and the legal support staff, that's your inventory. That is what you're selling. You're selling, it's not just the knowledge, it's the quantity, right? Like you have a certain amount of inventory that you're giving.
The hours.
Yeah. The hours, whether you
Because,
bill by the hour or not, right? Like the people
well,
get stuck on like, oh, but I do flat fee. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
if you
but
do flat fee, but don't do the work, then you're not going to be
there's
getting a lot of
still
flat fees.
there's still only so many hours in a week, right? You
Correct.
only get
Correct.
so much done.
Correct. An attorney only has so many clients they can serve at the same time. A paralegal has only so many clients they can serve at the same time. So if you're trying to build a $10 million business and therefore you need to serve 100,000 clients or whatever the number is, then you need the right staff to support that number of clients. And if that's 10 attorneys and 20 paralegals and 40 support staff, then that's what that looks like, right? So, but ultimately, it needs to be the people who are going to get the job done. It needs to be the production has to be there efficiently because otherwise you don't make a profit. And that shows up in the bottom line. It all comes back to the numbers. At the end of the day, you and I can look at a firm's financial statements, their profit and loss, their balance sheet, their cash flow, and we can know within 30 minutes whether it's a healthy business or not. Maybe
Yeah.
even shorter than that,
I
right?
was going to say, it doesn't really take that long, but okay.
Well, depends on how complex, right? Assuming that their financials are even up to date. I mean, so many firms are awful at that too, but let's not even go there. I mean, you need clean financials if you're going to try to sell your business. Um, but yeah, and you also need it to make good business decisions and to know what's happening in your business. So, but ultimately, you can tell if a firm's profitable or not. You can tell why it's not profitable simply by looking at where the money's going. And it can come down to inefficient marketing or unsuccessful marketing. It could come down to inefficient sales, right? And that you won't see on the profit and loss statement. That you'll need metrics of conversions from lead to sales. But those are two metrics that drive the revenue number, but it should cost a certain amount of your business. And guess what? That amount is not 50%, right? But so many people think, oh, I'll put $1 in, get $2 out. It's perfect. I'll do that all day long. You cannot run a profitable business that way. So the numbers don't lie. The numbers tell a story. And what Brooke went through is the various departments um, that are shown on the profit and loss statement, where you can see the effect to the business's bottom line and to the cash flow of each department's productivity. I'll turn it over to you. Um, Anything that we did not talk about that needs to be discussed when it comes to buying and selling a business?
I think the most important thing is that a business isn't, you don't get it ready to sell overnight. You've got to have 3 years of great looking financials going into some kind of deal. So it takes a while to get there. So start now. And just because you have a firm that's a really attractive acquisition, that doesn't mean you have to sell. You can just keep it and just keep taking that cash flow.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, one of the things that I work with my clients for is creating generational wealth. And the key to creating generational wealth is to get your business to the point where it's throwing off gobs of cash, because that is what you're going to use to invest in other means, right? Like you can take that cash and you can use it to buy some real estate. You can use it to invest in the market. You can use it to buy a second home. You can use it to buy an Airbnb. I mean, you can do lots of money with that, well, lots of things with that money, to grow your overall net worth. Um, and this is a problem in the legal industry too, where a lot of law firm owners achieve this level of success, but they don't do anything with the money, right? And having the money under your mattress in so to speak, right? Like in a bank account, in a savings account, checking account, doesn't do anything for you, doesn't serve you there. It loses money there because inflation makes it have less purchasing power. So there's a lot you can do when you have cash, and you can set yourself up pretty nicely financially if you take the right steps. But it requires your business throwing off that cash, which has the added benefit of you having a marketable firm that can also then give you assets as you decide or approach to divest yourself of that entity, whether it's because you're retiring or because you're bored, whatever your motivation is.
Or because you found something that you want to do more and you need the cash to bankroll that next thing.
I know a lot of attorneys who have moved on to do other things besides for running their law firm. Love what they do. They're very successful at what they do. They didn't make a mistake practicing law, but they moved that was a stepping stone for their next thing. I mean, heck, I spent 20 years in IT. Look what I'm doing now, right? Like it's never, you can do whatever you want. There's no rules to this game, but one thing's for sure, you can unlock the most value by doing by preparing your firm the way that Brooke just set it up. So, really great conversation. As we draw to a close, any parting words of advice or wisdom you want to share? I know you probably just did that. We can maybe even repeat it. But also, where should people go to get in touch with you?
The best place to get in touch with me is our
Barnes and
website,
Noble and Amazon.com.
Amazon.com. Absolutely, Amazon.com. The book is called Exit on Top. And our website is cathcap.com, cathcap.com. And, you can shoot me an email from there.
Awesome. Love it. Brooke, it's really been a pleasure having you here. Love the conversation. And we just scratched the surface. I can't wait to get my hands on the book and dive in. And folks, I know Brooke's last book, and I mean, she's really a force of nature to run into in person. So if you've been in the conference circuit, I'm sure you've met her already. But really, really enjoyed having you on the show, and happy to have you here. And this book is definitely one that you want to add to your library. We'll link that up in the show notes, which you can find at profitwithlaw.com, or on the show notes page right below this in the description on your podcast player in the resources section, which should be at the tail end of it. And if you enjoyed this conversation and you're not yet subscribed to our podcast, hit that subscribe button so you get notified every time we release a new episode, which is every single Thursday. When you wake up in the morning on Thursday morning, it is the first thing you do. You reach for your phone and look for the new Profit with Law podcast episode. Okay, maybe it's not the first thing you do, but hopefully you're joining us every single week. And we continue to try to bring you the best of the best when it comes to talent and information for the law firm growth industry. You may not know this, but we are also on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Go to profitwithlaw.com/YouTube and check it out there. We don't just have the podcast episodes there. We actually have a ton of content we created just for YouTube, and my team is in the back room chopping things up and making little bite-sized pieces of material for you. They're called Reels or Shorts, YouTube Shorts, yes, and Reels on Instagram. Go check out our YouTube Shorts. If you want a quick dose, 60 seconds of really valuable information, that's the place to go. So check it out, profitwithlaw.com/YouTube. You'll be redirected directly to our YouTube channel. Folks, until next time, let's keep it profitable. Make that money, cha-ching, cha-ching, and we'll see you next Thursday. Take care.